So with question G, we have to get rid of this times 5 first. So we can either expand the bracket or we can divide both sides by 5. So since on the right hand side I can see 10 and 10 is a multiple of 5, I can just divide both sides by 5 rather than expanding the bracket. So divide by 5 on the left, divide by 5 on the right. So on the left hand side, the times 5 and divide 5 cancels out, leaving me with just x plus 3, and we won't need the bracket anymore. And on the right hand side, 10 divided by 5 is just 2, and then copy the sign down. Now to get the x on its own, we have to get rid of the plus 3. So take away 3 on the left, take away 3 on the right. So now on the left hand side, the plus 3 and the minus 3 cancels out, leaving with just x. On the right hand side, 2 take away 3 is minus 1. So x is greater than or equal to minus 1. So if they additionally ask the question, what is the smallest whole number that x could be, or what's the smallest integer that x could be, the answer would be x could be equal to minus 1. But the answer to our question here is this: x is greater than or equal to minus 1. And as I said previously, you can always check your answer by substituting this value in. So if we said x was minus 1, well, minus 1 add 3 would make the total of the bracket, what's inside the bracket, to be 2, and then you do 2 times 5 is 10. So therefore it looks like our answer was correct. So you can always substitute your x value back in to check that your answer was right. So when we substitute the value of minus 1 in, so we get 5 times, instead of x, it's going to be minus 1 add 3. So we said x can be equal to minus 1, and we've just got to make sure that it is equal to or greater than 10. So what's minus 1 add 3? Minus 1 add 3 is 2. We don't need the bracket anymore, so 5 times 2, remember this means there's a secret times sign there. So 5 times 2 has to be equal to or greater than 10. Well, 5 times 2 is 10, so therefore we were correct. So you can always substitute your answer from here to check if you get the right answer. So there's a more detailed explanation of this in the solving equations playlist. So to get in question H x on its own, we can either expand the bracket, or to get this times 2, I can just divide both sides by 2, which will be easier in this case. So divide both sides by 2. So now I will have on the left hand side the times 2 and the divide 2 is cancelled out. So I've only got x minus 7 on the left, and on the right hand side 2 divided by 2 is 1. I'll copy the right sign down. Now to get x on its own, I have to get rid of this minus 7, so that means add 7 to both sides. So now that minus 7 and the plus 7 cancels out, leaving with just x on the left, and 1 add 7 on the right is equal to 8. So x has to be less than 8. So now if you substitute any number here that's less than 8, you should get an answer that is less than 2. So check by substitution, that does work. So question I, to get x on its own, we have to first of all get rid of this divide 3 first. To do that, we have to multiply both sides by 3, so times 3 on the left times by 3 on the right. So now on the left hand side, the divide 3 and the times 3 cancels out, leaving with just x plus 2, and on the right hand side, well, 4 times 3 is 12. Now to get the x on its own, we have to get rid of this plus 2 here. So to do that, we take away 2 on the left, take away 2 on the right. So now on the left, the plus 2 and the minus 2 is cancelled out, leaving with just x. And on the right hand side, 12 take away 2 is 10. 12 take away 2 is 10. And then just copy the sign down. So remember, always substitute this value in to the original equation to check that it does work. So x is greater than 10. So for question J, to get the x on its own, I have to get rid of this divide by 4 first. So to do that, I have to multiply both sides by 4. So the divide 4 and the times 4 cancels out, and that leaves me on the right hand side just x minus 5 don't need the fraction 9 anymore because it's not dividing by anything. On the right hand side, well, 1 times 4, this 1 times 4 is just 4, and then just copy the sign down. And then finally, to get the x on its own, I have to get rid of this minus 5, so I add 5 on the left, I add 5 on the right. So now on the left hand side, the minus 5 and the plus 5 cancels out, leaving just x, and on the right hand side, 4 add 5 is 9. So x has to be equal to or less than 9. So like I said, always substitute in to check your answer. So what's 9 take away 5 divided by 4? Will it give us 1? It will, because 9 take away 5 is 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1. So this is just me substituting it in. Instead of x, I put 9 because we said x is equal to or less than 9. So always substitute to check your answer, because we can always make some silly errors, and it's always a good way to check your answer. So question K now, to get the x on its own, we have to get rid of this divide by 5 by timesing both sides by 5. So we times the left hand side by 5 and the right hand side. So we times both sides by 5. So on the left hand side, the divide 5 and the times 5 cancels out. So there's not even a need for this fraction line anymore. So we just have x plus 1 on the left, and on the right hand side we have 2 times 5, which is 10. So 2 times 5, which is 10, and then just copy the sign down. Now on the left hand side, to get the x on its own, we have to get rid of this plus 1. So we're going to take away 1 from the left, we're going to take away 1 from the right. That means on the left hand side we'll be left with just x, because the plus 1 and the minus 1 cancels out, leaving with just x. And on the right hand side, 10 take away 1 is just 9. So copy the sign down. So x has to be equal to or greater than 9, and always check your answer. So instead of x, if I put 9, add 1, and then divide it by 5. So instead of x, I use 9 here. Is it equal to or less than 2? Yes, it is, because 9 add 1 is 10. 10 over 5 is equal to 2. But remember, always substitute your answer to check that you haven't made any mistakes. Finally, question L. So to get rid of this divide 4 here, to get the x on its own, we have to multiply both sides by 4. So times this side by 4 and times this side by 4. So now on the left hand side, this divide 4 and times 4 cancels out, so we don't even need the fraction line anymore. So it's just x minus 1, and on the left hand side, 3 times 4 is 12. So just write 12 here. So now to get the x on its own, we have to get rid of this minus 1. To do that, we have to add 1 to this side, we have to add 1 to this side. So now on the left hand side, the minus 1 and the add 1 cancels out, and just x, and on the right hand side, 12 add 1 is 13. Final answer is x has to be less than 13, and always substitute in to check. So instead of x, I'm going to use 13, and then it was minus 1, so I'm going to write minus 1 divided by 4, and this has to be less than 3. So 13 take away 1 is equal to 12, so 12 divided by 4 is equal to 3, but we know that x has to be less than 3. Sorry, x has to be less than 13. So if we used any number less than 13, the answer here would be less than 3. So that's how we know our answer was correct. So if I continue with this, 12 divided by 4 is 4. Sorry, 12 divided by 4 is 3. And our answer would be less than 3. So in this case 3 is not less than 3. But remember, I used 3 here. I didn't use a number less than 13. So if I use any number less than 13, then the answer here would have been smaller than 3. So when you're checking your answer, just pretend it was the equal sign. It's not a problem. So long as 3 is equal to 3, it's fine. So I'll explain that one more time, maybe it wasn't clear. So we knew x was less than 13. So when you're substituting and checking the answer, just treat it as an equation. So x minus 1 over 4 has to be equal to 3. Now what do we say x was? We said x has to be number less than 13. So let's just use 13. So 13 take away 1 divided by 4 has to be equal to 3. 13 take away 1 is 12, so 12 divided by 4, is that equal to 3? Yes, it is. So that's how we know our answer is correct.